Hello, everyone. My name is Bethany Rickman, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my action research topic. I am currently a seventh grade ELA teacher at Woodlake Valley Middle School in Woodlake, California. I am also fortunate enough to be adding 2 new sections to my schedule this year. I will also be teaching art and art appreciation, and so I'm very excited to be teaching both of my passions this year. I actually graduated in 2008 from Fresno State with a degree in fine arts, and my emphasis was in art history. I started at National University back in 2017 to obviously get my single subject credential and my master's degree. I have also been fortunate enough to be an NU scholar, and I am the operations coordinator at Pride at NU, so I have loved my time and experience here at National. I'm a little sad that it's almost over, but also very excited to see where this degree takes me in the future. So, seeing that I teach both English and art, it should come as no surprise that my research topic combines those 2 passions of mine. My overall broad topic is, can art support literacy in the language arts classroom? Through my research, I've found that there's a lot of evidence and a lot of studies out there showing how language can be supported in an art classroom, but not so much in reverse. So I would really like to focus on how bringing art into the language arts classroom affects students and specifically ELs. My specific research question is, do visual thinking strategies enhance the quality and quantity of EL's argumentative writing? So I'm using an art strategy called visual thinking strategies. This is basically where you show students an image, a piece of art, and you ask them 2 questions, well, 3 questions. You ask them, what do you see and what makes you say that? And then once they've answered those questions, you then ask them, what more can you find? And what this does is it really gets students engaged in higher order thinking. And obviously, there are some parallel strategies there between that thought process and then also what students do in argumentative writing and finding evidence and justification for their claims. So I chose this strategy to bring into my ELA classroom. One, because I do think that it parallels the argumentative writing process, but also because most 7th graders have a very similar exposure to art and art appreciation, so it really levels the playing field for all students, creating a little bit of equity. That and most students are more comfortable talking about what they see in an image before moving on to more complex ideas such as, what do you think about this topic or this problem? And then asking them to go write about it. So I feel like it's a good segue between those 2. So of course, my related sub-questions are, does VTS provide a safe and comfortable environment for ELs to express higher order thinking skills? And also, does it encourage them to use more complex language over time? And does this transfer to their writing? And I'll talk a little more about how I plan on figuring that out on my next slide. So my hypothesis is that when compared to ELs with no exposure to VTS, ELs exposed to consistent VTS strategies will receive higher scores on their post-assessment and be able to write more for longer periods of time. So my first research question about whether or not VTS improves the quality and quantity of EL's argumentative writing samples will require a quantitative approach. And I will do that by comparing pre and post assessment scores of writing samples using a timed on-demand writing prompt from the writing units of study. That's the curriculum we use at Woodlake Valley Middle School in our ELA department. We then score those pre and post assessments using SBAC rubrics. And I will also assess the length of these writing samples by their word count. The next 2 related sub-questions will require a qualitative approach. So I'll be assessing the attitudes and comfort level of students and how their language changes over time by audio recording interviews with participants and giving them survey questions that they will answer several times throughout the process and the research. And I will also video record lessons analyzing the language that they're using in our VTS discussions. So I will be able to go back and see how they were structuring their language, what vocabulary terms they were using, what sentence frames they were choosing to use, and then be able to transcribe those video recordings and look for patterns, and then compare the patterns in the language used in discussion and compare that to their writing. So the overall process of my action research will look a little something like this. First, I'll need to meet with administration to discuss the purpose and parameters of the study to make sure they're on board. Next, I will acquire any necessary permission slips or waivers in the case that students are not allowed to be audio or video recorded. After that, I will administer and score the pre-assessment toward the beginning of the year before any writing instruction has been given. This is done so I get a raw look at what ELs are capable of doing with their argumentative writing. Toward the time that I am thinking about beginning an argumentative writing unit, I will start conducting initial interviews with participants to gauge their comfort levels and attitudes about speaking out in class and sharing ideas with partners, small groups, whole class, etc. After that, I will go ahead and complete the argumentative writing unit, and during that time, I will use VTS 3 times a week at the beginning of class. I will also conduct subsequent interviews during this time to see how attitudes and comfort levels are changing throughout the unit, or if they're changing at all. I'll also be recording those VTS lessons and transcribing the language I hear and start noticing and recording any patterns I'm finding. After the unit is completed, I will administer the post-assessment and score those. I will then collect all my data together and begin to analyze what I'm finding, especially between the post-assessment scores of those exposed to VTS and those who were not. I will also be looking at those patterns from the transcriptions of the video recordings and seeing if any of the same language being used during VTS discussions showed up in participants' writing. Some of the resources that I've used and will continue to use throughout my action research are the Writing Units of Study. So that's a curriculum where I find the on-demand writing prompts for my pre and post assessments. The VTS website, which provides a lot of tips and tricks for the VTS strategies as well as images for VTS discussion. The SBAC website and rubrics for scoring. I've used the NU library a lot to gather resources for my action research proposal and lit review, and I'm sure I will continue to use it as I conduct my action research for any additional resources I might need. And my critical friend who has been able to read over my research proposal and give me tips about wording and APA format, and I'm sure I'll be able to bounce ideas off them as I conduct research since they know what I'm going through and are doing it themselves. As much as I've enjoyed writing my action research proposal and the fact that it's given me a lot of insight into my teaching, if I could go back and talk to my pre-action research self, I would definitely tell me to narrow down my topic as soon as possible. I knew coming into this program that I'd want to research something to do with art and how it influences literacy and supports ELs in the classroom, but I definitely had a broad vision at first, and it was a little overwhelming when I started thinking about what kind of data I would collect and how I would collect it. And once I got the advice from a professor to get almost ultra specific, that's when it really all started coming together for me. Because then I knew I would be focusing on one strategy and one unit of study and exactly what kind of data I would collect and how I would collect it. I do think that I could still narrow it down even more, but I definitely feel very comfortable with the research question that I posed and the process that it would take to gather that data and find out the answer to that question. Um, Plus, I feel that if you're very specific from the beginning, um, if you still have more questions based on what you find, you can continue doing more research after the fact. But if it's too broad, I think not only is it overwhelming, but the data might not be quite as reliable. Um, but we'll see how it goes. Thank you.